My name is Emily Hayes, and I'm 29 years old. I've spent the past 5 years working as a web developer in a tiny tech startup in Austin, Texas. The office is small, so small, in fact, that we operate out of a converted warehouse in East Austin. The air conditioning is iffy, the break room smells like burnt coffee, and the Wi Fi sometimes cuts out when you need it the most. But it's my work, my grind, and for that, I'm proud. I've worked my ass off to get here, to prove that I could make it on my own without the help of anyone, especially not my family. I share a cramped two-bedroom apartment in South Austin with my roommate Becca. The place is, well, it's seen better days. Cracked tiles in the bathroom, a faucet that won't stop leaking no matter how many times maintenance tries to fix it, and thin walls that make it feel like we're living in a paper-thin shoebox. Still, it's mine. Or at least, it's mine for now. The August heat turns our ancient AC unit into a buzzing death trap, and we keep the thermostat at 78 just to avoid an electric bill that could give us a heart attack. But, that's life. I've always managed. I've always been able to make it work. Here's the thing about my family. My grandfather, William Hayes, is ridiculously wealthy. The man built a fortune in the oil business back in the 70s and 80s, then smartly diversified into tech stocks long before anyone realized the boom that was coming. He lives in Dallas, and I see him maybe 3 or 4 times a year, but we stay close through texts and video calls. He's one of the few people in this world I actually trust. My parents, Richard and Catherine Hayes, live in Westlake Hills, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Texas. Their house is massive, 6 bedrooms, infinity pool, a 4-car garage, and an outdoor kitchen. They vacation in the Bahamas twice a year, drive matching Range Rovers, and my mother owns enough Hermes bags to fill an entire department store. They're living large, and the whole world knows it. Meanwhile, I'm drowning in $95,000 of student loan debt from my computer science degree at the University of Texas. It's crushing. When I graduated 6 years ago, my parents showed up, gave me a quick hug, and handed me a professionally wrapped gift. A book. It was titled The Millennial's Guide to Financial Independence. That was it. No help with my loans, no down payment for a car, just a book. My dad clapped me on the back and said, "Time to make your own way in the world, kiddo. We believe in you." I never asked Grandpa William for money. I don't know why. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was stubbornness, but I didn't want anyone to know how much I was struggling. I wanted to prove I could make it on my own, even if it meant surviving on breakfast tacos and store-brand ramen, shopping at Goodwill, and driving a 2008 Honda Civic that sounded like it was about to fall apart every time I hit 45 mph. Then, 2 weeks before my birthday, everything changed. I was sitting at my desk, typing away at some code, when I got the call. It was from my boss, Derek, and the look on his face when I walked into his cramped office said it all. "Emily," he said, his voice heavy, "I'm really sorry, but we have to let you go. The company's running out of runway, and we're downsizing the entire dev team." I remember standing there, the words slowly sinking in as I fought to keep my composure. 10 minutes later, I was packing up my desk, shoving my plants and that stupid keep calm and code on mug into a cardboard box. I had maybe 3 months of savings if I stretched every dollar to the breaking point. Rent was due in 2 weeks, my student loan payment was coming up, and I had no job, no prospects, and no safety net. I couldn't bring myself to go back to the apartment just yet. I called my parents, sitting in my car in the parking lot, trying not to cry. "Mom, I lost my job today," I said, my voice cracking. "Oh, that's unfortunate, sweetie," she replied, typing away on her laptop. She didn't even pause. "But you're resourceful. You'll figure something out." "Mom, I'm really struggling here," I said, my voice shaking. "I don't know how I'm going to make rent next month. I was wondering if maybe—" "Well, perhaps you should have built up a better emergency fund," she interrupted. "Financial planning is crucial, Emily. We gave you that book for a reason." I could hear her clicking away at her keyboard. "Anyway, we need to talk about your birthday. I've made reservations at Uchi for Saturday night. The omakase menu. It'll be fabulous." "Mom, that place is like $250 per person. I literally just told you I can't afford rent." "Nonsense. Birthdays are important. You can't skimp on celebrations, darling. It's tradition." I wanted to scream. Instead, I just mumbled, "Okay," and hung up the phone, sitting in the parking lot until the sun went down. When I finally dragged myself home, Becca was waiting on the couch with 2 bottles of Shinnebock and a bag of chips. "Em, you look like death," she said, patting the cushion next to her. "Sit. Talk." I told her everything: how I lost my job, my dwindling savings, my parents' tone-deaf response, the expensive birthday dinner that I couldn't afford but was apparently mandatory. Becca shook her head. "Your parents are unbelievable," she muttered. "Look, don't even worry about rent for now. I can cover the full amount for a couple of months until you get back on your feet. We'll figure it out together." I hugged her so tight I probably cracked a rib. The day of my birthday arrived too quickly. I pulled on my only nice dress, a navy blue thing I'd bought years ago at a consignment shop, and caught the bus to Uchi. My parents were already seated at a corner table when I arrived. "Happy birthday, darling," Mom said, air kissing both of my cheeks. "You look tired. Are you getting enough sleep?" "Thanks, Mom," I muttered, my throat tight. The conversation was excruciating. They talked about their upcoming trip to Turks and Caicos, the new Range Rover Sport my dad had just ordered, and my mother's private Pilates sessions at the country club. Not one word about my job situation. Not one question about how I was doing. Just a non-stop stream of their accomplishments and acquisitions. Then the door opened, and in walked Grandpa William, with his executive assistant, Sharon. Even at 82, the man commanded attention. He was tall, silver-haired, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than my car. The entire restaurant seemed to notice his entrance. "There's my favorite granddaughter," Grandpa boomed, crossing the room to pull me into a hug that actually meant something. "Grandpa, I didn't know you were coming." "Wouldn't miss your birthday for anything in the world," he said, as he sat down beside me. "Sharon helped me fly in this morning." He turned to my parents with an unreadable look in his sharp blue eyes. "So, Emily, how's life treating you?" I glanced at my mother, who gave me a look that could freeze lava. "Oh, I said, keeping busy, working hard." Grandpa smiled. "Excellent. And you're keeping an eye on your investment portfolio, making sure those quarterly distributions are being reinvested properly?" I froze. The words seemed to hang in the air, thick and heavy. My eyes darted between Grandpa and my parents. "What trust fund?" I whispered. The silence that followed was so complete it felt like the room had stopped. Grandpa's warm smile faded, replaced by something cold and calculating. "Ah," Grandpa said quietly, his voice cutting through the tension. "The trust fund I established when you were born. $5 million in initial capital to be transferred to your direct control when you turn 25. It's been performing beautifully." I blinked, twice. "I'm 29, I whispered. 4 years ago." "Then I guess someone forgot to tell you about it," Grandpa said, his voice sharp as steel. The room exploded with tension as my heart pounded in my chest. The air in the restaurant felt thick, suffocating. My mind raced, trying to piece together what had just happened. Grandpa's words hung in the air like smoke. I turned to my parents, but they wouldn't meet my eyes. They were frozen, pale, as though they had been caught in the act of something unspeakable. "What do you mean?" I whispered, my voice barely a breath. "What trust fund?" Grandpa leaned back in his chair, his sharp blue eyes now fixed on my parents. "The trust I set up when Emily was born. It was supposed to be transferred to her control when she turned 25. But somehow, it seems she wasn't told about it." The color drained from my mother's face. I could see her hands trembling as she clutched the edge of her glass. My father, on the other hand, just stared down at the table, his face ashen. "Grandpa," I said, my voice shaking, "what exactly are you saying?" "That the trust fund has been active for the last 4 years, Grandpa continued, his voice colder than I'd ever heard it. $5 million, initially. The market's been good. It's now worth $5.2 million. And that money was supposed to be transferred to you when you turned 25. But it wasn't. Someone has failed in their duties." I blinked, trying to process the words, the weight of them crashing down on me. The anger started to rise in my chest, but I couldn't get the words out. My parents had stolen money from me, money that should have been mine, money that could have paid off my debt, given me a chance to live without constantly struggling, and I never even knew it existed. "Tell me," Grandpa said, his voice stern now. "Where's the money, Richard? Catherine?" My mother's voice wavered as she finally spoke, but she didn't look up. "It's not what you think. Her voice faltered, and she glanced nervously at my father, as though seeking some kind of support. "Don't lie to her," Grandpa snapped. "I want the truth, now." The tension in the room was unbearable. My father's face turned from pale to green, as if he were about to be sick. He cleared his throat, shifting in his seat, clearly uncomfortable under Grandpa's gaze. "There must be some mistake," my father finally said, his voice so weak that I almost didn't recognize it. We were going to tell her. We just didn't know how. We were going to wait until it was the right time. Grandpa's glare could have cut through glass. Right time? You had 4 years, Richard. 4 years. And yet you chose to let your daughter struggle, living paycheck to paycheck, while you spent money that wasn't yours to spend. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, my vision beginning to blur with the rush of emotions flooding me. Betrayal, anger, confusion. I tried to speak, but the words stuck in my throat. I don't understand, I said, my voice hoarse. Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you help me? My mother's expression twisted in something I could only describe as guilt and defensiveness. We thought you needed to learn to make your own way, she said quickly, as if the words were rehearsed. Independence, Emily. You needed to build your own life, to stand on your own feet. You weren't ready. I could feel my hands shaking as I clenched them into fists. Independence? I echoed, the word tasting like acid in my mouth. You let me starve, let me walk to work in the rain, let me live in that hellhole apartment, all for the sake of independence, while you went on luxury vacations, bought new cars, renovated your house? My voice had risen without me even realizing it, the heat of my anger spilling out. I could see my parents shrinking under my gaze, but their guilt was more about being caught than anything else. We didn't know how to stop, my father muttered, his voice barely a whisper. It was just easy. The money was there. It didn't feel real. We didn't mean to hurt you. Didn't mean to hurt me, I scoffed. You took what was mine, what I didn't even know existed. You robbed me of my future. The weight of the realization hit me again, hard. All those years I'd been struggling, thinking it was my fault, thinking I wasn't good enough, all while they were living it up on my money. It made my stomach churn, the anger threatening to choke me. Where is it, Richard? Grandpa's voice was icy, his patience running thin. Where's the rest of her money? My father sighed, slumping in his seat. We used it for the house, the cars, the vacations. Tell her everything, Grandpa demanded, the whole truth. I turned away from my parents, the anger boiling inside me. I couldn't even look at them anymore. Grandpa's words had shattered something inside me. I felt a sick, gnawing emptiness. I don't want to hear it, I said through gritted teeth. I can't. Grandpa stood up abruptly. Enough. I'm done with this charade. Emily, let's go. We'll sort this out in private. I stood to follow him, but I didn't even look at my parents. The betrayal was too much. It was suffocating. Grandpa led me out of the dining room, and I could feel the eyes of the entire restaurant on me as we left. When we reached the private room he'd requested, I felt a wave of exhaustion hit me, like I might collapse. Sit down, sweetheart, Grandpa said quietly, motioning to a chair. We'll get this sorted. Don't worry. I sat down, burying my face in my hands. The world felt like it had just cracked open beneath me, and I wasn't sure if I'd ever be able to put it back together. Grandpa was already on the phone, speaking to his lawyer in clipped tones. We need a full forensic audit, he was saying. I want to know where every penny went, now. I could barely focus on his words. I was numb. My mind kept replaying everything I had just learned, everything my parents had done. I didn't even know what to feel anymore, betrayed, furious, but also heartbroken. This was my family, and yet they had taken everything from me. Grandpa hung up and turned to me, his face as hard as stone. This isn't over, Emily. We will make sure you're taken care of, and we'll make sure they pay for what they've done. I nodded, though my throat felt tight. I wasn't sure what I wanted anymore, revenge, justice, or something else entirely. All I knew was that everything had changed. The private dining room felt suffocating, the air thick with the weight of everything that had just been revealed. Grandpa's voice was the only sound as he continued speaking to his lawyer, arranging for a forensic audit of my parents' accounts. I barely heard him. My thoughts were too loud, too jumbled. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of confusion, disbelief, and pure, unfiltered rage. When Grandpa finally hung up the phone, he turned to me with a stern expression. I know this is a lot to process, Emily, but we're not done. There's more. You need to hear this. More? I whispered, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. What could be worse than this? Grandpa didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached into his briefcase, pulled out a stack of papers, and handed them to me. I took them, but I didn't look at them right away. I just stared at the keys in my hand. The keys to a condo I didn't know existed. A condo my parents had been renting out for 2 years. Your parents were not only mismanaging the trust fund, Grandpa said slowly, they were also renting out a property I bought for you, a condo, for your 25th birthday. I looked up at him, confusion clouding my mind. A condo? Right in Hyde Park. It's yours, Emily. I bought it for you, fully paid. It should have been yours to live in, to do with as you pleased. But instead, your parents decided to rent it out. They've been collecting the rental income for the past 2 years without telling you about the property or the income. That's your money they've been pocketing. I felt the room spin, the air thickening around me as I slowly processed his words. A condo, a beautiful condo in Hyde Park, a place I had never even known about. My parents had been renting it out for over 2 years, living lavishly while I struggled to pay rent on a dilapidated apartment. My stomach twisted in knots as I thought about everything I had been through, working late nights, skipping meals, living paycheck to paycheck, while they had been collecting income from my condo without a word. How could they? I whispered, the question feeling like a punch to the gut. They're thieves, Emily, Grandpa said quietly, his voice steady but filled with disappointment. They've taken what wasn't theirs, and it's time for them to be held accountable. I shook my head, still unable to comprehend the depth of their betrayal. The condo was just the tip of the iceberg, the smallest piece of this entire twisted puzzle. What else had they taken? What else had they hidden from me? I felt like my entire life had been built on a lie. I don't want to hear it, I said, my voice breaking. I don't want to hear about how much they've stolen from me. I don't care about the condo. I don't care about the money. Grandpa's expression softened, but his eyes were filled with determination. You should care, Emily, because it's about more than just money. It's about trust, and your parents have broken that trust. They've taken something from you that was never theirs to take. I looked at the keys in my hand, the weight of them heavy in my palm. The condo was mine. It was supposed to be mine all along, and yet it felt hollow, empty, a symbol of everything I had lost, of everything my parents had taken from me without a second thought. I don't want it, I said, my voice barely a whisper. I don't want any of it. Grandpa reached over, placing a hand gently on mine. You don't have to take it, Emily, but it's yours if you want it, and you'll get what's owed to you. I'll make sure of it. The door opened, and Sharon stepped in, holding a folder with a series of documents. Mr. Hayes, we've got everything we need for the audit. The forensic team will begin tomorrow. Grandpa nodded, then turned to me. Emily, I want you to know something. This isn't just about taking money back. This is about making sure your parents face the consequences of what they've done. They've tried to run away from this, but they can't hide from the truth, and neither can you. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the full extent of what Grandpa was saying. My parents hadn't just stolen from me. They had been planning to disappear, to leave everything behind, to run off to Argentina with whatever money they could salvage, and they had used me as their escape plan. Emily, Grandpa continued, his voice firm, you need to decide. Do you want to press criminal charges against your parents? This is grand larceny, fraud, embezzlement. They could go to prison for years. I stared at the keys in my hand, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. What did I want? What was justice in this situation? Could I really send my parents to prison? Could I forgive them for everything they had done, for everything they had put me through? I need time, I said finally, my voice small and uncertain. I need time to think. I don't know if I can make that decision yet. Grandpa's eyes softened, and he nodded. Take all the time you need, sweetheart. This is your choice. But whatever you decide, we'll get through this together. I nodded slowly, but I didn't feel better. I didn't feel anything, really. I just felt numb. The anger, the hurt, the betrayal. It was all too much. As we left the private room, I felt the weight of the world pressing down on me. I didn't know what the future held, but one thing was certain. I couldn't go back to the way things were. My family had changed, and so had I. I had to find a way to move forward, to rebuild my life without them, without their lies and deceit hanging over me. The drive home felt like an eternity. Grandpa's car was quiet, the hum of the engine the only sound in the otherwise still air. I kept my eyes fixed on the road ahead, trying not to think about everything that had just happened. I didn't want to think about the trust fund, the condo, or the web of lies my parents had built around me. I didn't want to think about the betrayal that had shattered the image of my family I had spent my entire life trying to hold together. Grandpa had said he'd give me time to think, but I knew that time was slipping away. There were decisions to be made, hard decisions. I wasn't sure I was ready for any of them. When we arrived at his house in the quiet, tree-lined neighborhood of Terrytown, Grandpa didn't ask me about what I was feeling. He didn't push me to talk. He just handed me the keys to the guest room and told me to rest. "I'll be in my study if you need me," he said quietly. "Take your time." But I didn't go to bed. I couldn't. I spent the night pacing around Grandpa's house, looking at old family photos, sitting in the study, flipping through his books. Nothing seemed real anymore. The world I had known, the family I had trusted, everything had been a lie. By morning, I had made my decision. I was going to confront my parents, but this time, it was going to be different. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. I called them. My heart pounded as I listened to the phone ring. It took 3 rings before my father finally picked up. "Emily," he said, his voice tight, "we've been expecting your call." "I need to see you," I said, cutting straight to the point. "Today. Now." "Of course, we'll be here." I hung up without saying another word. There was no point in small talk, no point in pretending that everything was okay. When I arrived at their house, my mother opened the door before I had even knocked. Her face was pale, her eyes red, like she had been crying. But I didn't feel sympathy for her, not anymore. "Emily," she said softly, stepping aside to let me in. "We're so sorry. We didn't mean for it to go this far." I walked past her without saying anything. I wasn't here for apologies. I wasn't here for their excuses. I was here to get answers. My father was sitting in the living room, his hands resting in his lap, his shoulders slumped. He looked smaller somehow, like the weight of everything had crushed him. "Sit down," I said, my voice cold, distant. They both hesitated for a moment before sitting across from me, their eyes trained on the floor. For a moment, the only sound was the ticking of the clock in the hallway. The silence between us felt suffocating. "I know everything," I said, breaking the silence. "About the trust fund, the condo, the money you've been stealing from me." They didn't respond at first. They just sat there, their faces unreadable, their eyes avoiding mine. It was like they were waiting for me to say more, to give them a chance to explain. But I wasn't going to make it easy for them. "I've had enough," I continued. "I've had enough of the lies, the excuses. You've taken everything from me, and I want it back. I want the truth. I want to know where every single penny went." My father finally looked up at me, his expression one of guilt and regret. "We were wrong, Emily," he said quietly. "We were wrong to keep it from you, but it wasn't about the money. We didn't want you to think we were failures." "Failures?" I echoed, my voice rising. "You're failures because you've spent years lying to me. You've spent years pretending everything was fine while I struggled to survive. While you spent my money on vacation homes, new cars, and clothes I couldn't even afford to buy." "We thought you didn't need us," my mother said, her voice shaking. "We thought you were strong enough to handle it on your own. We didn't want to burden you." I stared at her in disbelief. "Burden me? You don't get to make that decision for me. You don't get to decide what I need or don't need. You took my money, and you let me suffer while you lived a life I didn't even know about." Tears welled up in my eyes, but I fought them back. I wasn't going to cry. Not for them, not anymore. "I want the condo," I said suddenly, the words slipping out before I could stop them. "I want what's mine. I want the rental income. I want everything you've stolen from me." My mother gasped, her hands trembling. "Emily, we didn't know how to tell you. We didn't know how to face you after everything." "You should have faced me," I interrupted. "You should have told me the truth when it mattered, but now it's too late." My father stood up suddenly, his face a mask of desperation. "Please, Emily, we're sorry. We know we've made mistakes, but we're trying to fix things. We've been going to therapy. We're paying the restitution. We're doing what we can to make it right." "You're doing what you can," I repeated, my voice trembling with rage. "You think paying me back slowly over time is going to fix this? You can't undo what you've done. You can't just buy back my trust." They both went silent, their eyes fixed on the floor. I didn't expect them to apologize. I didn't expect them to make things better. What I wanted was for them to understand the depth of the damage they had caused, the pain they had put me through. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said finally, my voice soft. "I don't know if I ever will. But I'll do what I have to do. I'll take control of my life. I'm done waiting for you to fix things. I'm done depending on you." My parents didn't speak. They didn't argue. They just sat there, like they knew they had no right to say anything more. "I want the condo," I said again, my voice firm this time. "I'm moving in. You'll have 30 days to vacate it, and I'll make sure the rental income goes to me, not to you." They nodded silently, and I could see the resignation in their eyes. They knew they had no choice but to comply. I want everything else, I added, standing up to leave. The money, the documents, the proof of what you've taken from me. I'm going to get back what's mine. I turned to leave, but before I could walk out the door, my father called my name. Emily, please, we're trying. We really are. Don't give up on us. I didn't turn around. I didn't look back. I've given up on you a long time ago, I said quietly, then stepped out into the world that no longer felt like home. The days after my confrontation with my parents felt like a blur. I'd left their house, walked out of their lives in a way that felt final, even though I wasn't ready to close the door completely. I had taken control of the condo, the one they'd been renting out for 2 years without telling me. It was mine now, and I was determined to make it my home, a place where I could finally breathe. But even as I moved into the condo, I didn't feel the relief I thought I would. I couldn't escape the lingering anger, the betrayal that still gnawed at me. The rental income I was now collecting from the condo didn't make me feel richer. It just made me feel more isolated. All I wanted was peace, but peace seemed so far out of reach. Grandpa had been supportive, but I could see the worry in his eyes whenever we spoke. He knew that the emotional toll this was taking on me was greater than anything I had anticipated, but he didn't push me to talk about it. Instead, he focused on helping me build a life that was mine and mine alone. He'd arranged for me to meet with Marie, a financial advisor who had been working with him for years. The meeting was supposed to be about learning how to handle my newfound wealth, to understand how investments worked, how to manage the condo's rental income. But it quickly became clear that this wasn't just about money. This was about rebuilding my sense of self. You've been given an opportunity to start over, Emily, Marie said as she reviewed my finances. You don't have to rely on anyone else. You've got a foundation now. It's time to start thinking about what you want your future to look like, not just what you've been handed. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I stared at the portfolio of investments she'd laid out in front of me, the numbers blurring as I thought about everything that had led me here. I don't know if I'm ready for this, I admitted, my voice quiet. I've spent my whole life just trying to get by. I've never thought about building something real. Marie's eyes softened, and she leaned forward. You've already built something, Emily. Look at where you are now. You're taking control. You're stepping into a new life, and that's something most people never get the chance to do. I nodded slowly, absorbing her words. It wasn't just about the money, I realized. It was about taking ownership of my life, of my future, of everything I had built without relying on anyone else's help or approval. It was about creating something that was truly mine. That night, I sat alone in my new condo, staring out the window at the city lights. The view was beautiful. Hyde Park was quiet, peaceful, and the kind of place I had always dreamed of living in. But as I sat there, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. My parents' betrayal had shattered something deep inside me, and no amount of money or success could fill that void. Becca had been my constant throughout this. She had helped me move into the condo, offering her support without hesitation, as she always had. She was my chosen family now. And when she called me that night, I didn't hesitate to pick up. Hey, Em, Becca said, her voice light. How's the new place? It's beautiful, I said, my voice a little hollow. It's everything I could have wanted, I guess, but it doesn't feel like home. Becca didn't say anything for a moment, but I could hear the soft sound of her breathing on the other end. She knew what I meant. You're just starting over, Em. It'll take time, but you're doing it. You've got this, and you've got me. I smiled, the first real smile I'd had in days. I don't know what I'd do without you. I'm not going anywhere, Becca said firmly. You know that. And when you're ready to take the next step, whether it's with your business or whatever comes next, I'll be right there with you. You don't have to do this alone. The truth was, I was afraid. I was afraid that no matter how much money I had, no matter how much success I achieved, I would never feel whole again. But Becca was right. I didn't have to do this alone. I had Grandpa, I had Becca, and I had myself. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The next few days were a whirlwind of new beginnings. I hired a contractor to help me update the condo, to make it feel like my space. I put together a new budget, focusing on the future, on the things I could build with the wealth I had now. I even started thinking about my career. I had always been a web developer, but I realized that I could do more. I could build something bigger. Maybe it was time to start my own consulting business. Grandpa was there, offering advice when I needed it, but never pushing me to move faster than I was ready. He had made his fortune through patience and hard work, and he wanted me to learn that lesson. A week later, I sat in front of my computer, drafting the first draft of my business plan, Hayes Digital Solutions, a consulting firm that would provide web development, digital marketing, and tech strategy to small businesses in Austin. It was a leap, but it felt right. I was finally taking control of my future, not just in terms of money, but in terms of who I was becoming. Becca, as always, was my biggest cheerleader. "This is it, Em," she said when I told her. "This is the beginning of something huge. You've got this." I took a deep breath, looking at the draft of my plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And that was all I needed. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had a future that I could shape on my own terms. 2 weeks had passed since I made the decision to step into my new life. Things were moving faster than I had anticipated. My consulting business was beginning to take off, and the condo was slowly transforming into a space that truly felt like mine. The first few nights in the condo were rough. It was beautiful, yes, but it felt so empty. The silence was deafening at times. The weight of the past lingered, no matter how much I tried to fill the space with new beginnings. Then, one morning, the call came. It was from my mother. "Emily," her voice cracked as soon as I answered. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say something. Please, just listen." I stood frozen for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. I hadn't spoken to my parents since that disastrous dinner, and part of me had hoped that would be the end of it. The part of me that wanted peace, that didn't want to be dragged back into their world of lies and manipulation. But another part of me, something deeper, knew that this was inevitable. They weren't going to let me go without at least trying to make things right. "Mom," I said cautiously, unsure of what to expect. "What is it?" "I'm sorry, Emily," she said, her voice shaky. "I'm so sorry for everything, for what we did, for the lies, for all of it. We were wrong. And I know that nothing I can say will change what's happened. But I need you to know that I understand now. I understand the damage we caused, and I'm asking for your forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to make it right." I closed my eyes, holding back the rush of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. I hadn't expected an apology. Not like this. Not one that felt so raw, so sincere. My mother had always been good at pretending, good at hiding behind her facade of wealth and status. But now I heard the cracks in her voice, the brokenness that I had always suspected was there. "You've hurt me, Mom," I said softly. "You've taken so much from me, my trust, my security, my peace of mind." "I know," she whispered, "and I'm so sorry. But we've been going to therapy, your father and I. We're trying to understand why we did what we did, and we're paying restitution. Every month. We know it's not enough, but we're trying. I just need you to know that we are trying to be better people." I didn't know how to respond. I didn't know if I was ready to forgive her, or if I ever would be. The wound was too deep, and it still stung with every memory of my parents' betrayal. But there was something in her voice, something vulnerable, that made me pause. "I need time, Mom," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not ready to forgive you yet. Maybe I never will be. But I can't keep carrying this anger. I can't keep carrying this resentment. It's too heavy." "I understand," she replied, her voice full of sorrow. "I'll wait. We'll wait. But please know that we love you, Emily. We always have." I didn't know what to say to that. The words didn't feel like they were enough. How could they be, after everything they had done? But I couldn't ignore the truth in her voice either. My parents were still my parents, and as much as I had tried to push them away, I couldn't erase the years of history, the years of love and pain that we had shared. "I'll think about it," I said, the words coming out slowly, carefully. "But right now, I need to focus on my life, on what I'm building. I don't have space for this, right now." "I understand," she said again, quieter this time. "Just know that we're here when you're ready. We're not going anywhere." I hung up the phone, feeling the weight of the conversation settle in my chest. I wasn't sure what I felt, relief, guilt, confusion. But one thing was certain, I wasn't ready to let them back in. Not yet, and maybe not ever, but I couldn't pretend that this conversation hadn't affected me. Over the next few days, I found myself reflecting on my past more than I had in a long time. The trust fund, the condo, the years of struggling while my parents lived in luxury, spending money that was never theirs to spend. But it wasn't just about money. It was about the betrayal, the lies that had fractured our relationship beyond repair. I didn't know if that kind of hurt could ever be healed. But I wasn't the same person I had been before. The Emily who had walked away from their home and into the world alone was stronger, more determined. And I was starting to realize that maybe, just maybe, I didn't need their approval anymore. I didn't need them to define me. Grandpa had been right about one thing. I had everything I needed inside of me. I had built a life that was my own, independent of their wealth, their influence, their control. And that, in itself, was worth more than any trust fund or property they could have given me. That night, as I sat in the condo, looking out over Hyde Park, I thought about the future. I was building something real now, something that was truly mine. And while I didn't know what my relationship with my parents would look like in the future, I knew one thing for sure. I didn't need them to succeed. I didn't need their forgiveness, or their approval, or their money. I had everything I needed to build the life I had always dreamed of, and that was enough. The weeks passed in a blur. Hayes Digital Solutions was growing steadily, and each new contract, each new project, felt like a small victory. I had taken something fragile, something that had once felt impossible, and turned it into something real. I was finally doing what I loved, and I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. Grandpa continued to be my guiding light, offering advice and wisdom whenever I needed it. He'd seen the world change in ways I couldn't even imagine, but he had always been patient, always methodical. I often found myself wondering if he ever felt as lost or as angry as I had when he was my age. Maybe he did. Maybe that was why he understood what it meant to build something lasting, to create a legacy. It wasn't just business that Grandpa wanted to talk about, though. Over Sunday dinners at his house, we often discussed what really mattered: family, values, integrity. Grandpa had been the one to teach me that real wealth wasn't measured by the size of your bank account, but by the depth of your relationships, the choices you made, and the impact you had on others. It was over one of those dinners that he first brought up the idea of the family foundation. "I've been thinking," Grandpa began, his voice steady, but there was a glint of something in his eyes that caught my attention. "About legacy, about what we leave behind." I paused, looking up from my plate. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I've spent my life building wealth, but wealth is fleeting, Emily. What really matters is how we use that wealth to help others, to make a difference in the lives of people who didn't have the same opportunities we did." I felt my heart skip a beat. Grandpa wasn't talking about the business, or the trust fund, or even the money he'd made over the years. He was talking about something deeper, something that transcended financial success. "I want to create a foundation," he said quietly, "a foundation that supports young people, kids who have the drive but not the resources, scholarships, mentorship programs, that sort of thing. I want to give back, and I want you to be part of it." My breath caught in my throat. "You want me to be involved?" He nodded. "I want you to help run it. You've got the skills, the experience, and you understand what it's like to build something from the ground up. I want you to carry on what I've started, but in your own way. I want you to be a co-trustee. I want you to be part of something bigger than just yourself." I felt a wave of emotion hit me, a mix of pride, disbelief, and something else that I couldn't quite put into words. This was more than just a business venture. This was a chance to give back, to make a real impact on the world. And it felt like the next step in my journey. It felt like something I could stand behind, something that would help heal the wounds of the past. "I don't know what to say," I said, my voice thick. "I never thought about doing something like this." "You don't have to know what to say," Grandpa replied with a soft smile. "You're already doing it. You've made your mark. Now it's time to think about how you can help others do the same." The idea of running the foundation, of using my skills and resources to make a difference, filled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt before. It was like everything I had worked for, all the struggles I had endured, had led me to this moment. I had taken back control of my life, and now I had the chance to help others take control of theirs. "I'll do it," I said finally, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. "I'll help run the foundation. I want to be part of this. I want to make sure that kids like me, kids who feel like they don't have a shot, have a chance." Grandpa's smile was slow, but it was full of pride. "That's what I like to hear." Over the next few weeks, Grandpa and I worked together to lay the groundwork for the foundation. We drafted the mission statement, set up the legal framework, and started reaching out to potential mentors and partners. I found myself pouring every ounce of energy I had into this new venture, but it didn't feel like work. It felt like something I was meant to do. And in the midst of all this, my relationship with Becca deepened even more. She had become more than just a friend. She was my family. the one person who had stuck by me through everything, who had helped me when I had nothing. We spent weekends brainstorming ideas for the foundation, planning events, and imagining the future. I knew that whatever happened, we would continue to support each other. We were in this together. But even as I moved forward, I still had the looming question of my parents. I hadn't heard from them in a while, and part of me wondered if I was making a mistake by leaving things unresolved. They were paying their restitution, yes, but I had to wonder if that would ever be enough. Then, one afternoon, I got an unexpected call. It was my father. "Emily," he said, his voice trembling, "I don't expect you to forgive us, but I wanted to tell you something. Your mother and we've been talking, and we're really trying to change. We're still paying what we owe, and we've made some real progress. We're working on ourselves." I didn't know what to say. The anger, the resentment, it was still there, simmering beneath the surface. But there was something different in his voice, something honest, something real. "I'm glad you're working on it," I said finally, my voice softer than I expected. "But I'm not ready to talk to you yet. I don't know when I'll be ready, but I need you to know that I'm okay. I'm really okay." My father didn't respond right away. Then, finally, he spoke in a low, quiet voice. "I'm proud of you, Emily. I hope you know that, and I hope one day you'll let us be a part of your life again." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to forgive them, but another part of me knew that I wasn't ready yet. Maybe I never would be. But one thing was clear. I was moving forward, and I wasn't going to let them hold me back anymore. As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange sense of peace. I didn't need to forgive them to move forward. I didn't need their approval, their love, or their money to build the life I had always dreamed of. I had already built something real, something mine, and in the end, that was all that mattered. A year passed since the day I moved into the condo, and the transformation in my life was undeniable. Hayes Digital Solutions had exceeded my expectations. The business was thriving, and I was finally in a place where I could breathe, really breathe, without constantly worrying about whether I was one misstep away from losing it all. My work was fulfilling, and I had built a team that believed in what we were doing, something I hadn't even imagined a year ago. Becca was flourishing in her new job as a charge nurse at St. David's, and we still spent our weekends together, planning our next steps, checking in on the foundation's progress, and occasionally indulging in lazy brunches and overpriced lattes. Life had settled into something that resembled peace, and for the first time, I felt in control of everything that mattered. But even as I built my new life, I couldn't entirely escape the shadow of my parents. I hadn't spoken to them in months, not since that tense conversation in their living room. They were still paying their restitution, slowly but steadily, but that was all I knew. Every call they made went to voicemail. Every card they sent was left unanswered. And then, one afternoon, I received a message that changed everything. It was from my father. "Emily, it's me. I know it's been a while. I don't expect you to respond, but I wanted to reach out one last time. We're still working on our issues. I hope you know that. But I also wanted to tell you that I'm proud of everything you've done. You've built something incredible. I've been following your business. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I hope one day you'll understand that we are trying to be better." I stared at the message for a long time. It wasn't an apology. Not exactly. It wasn't the kind of gesture that would immediately make everything better. But something in his words, something in the honesty of them, hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. Part of me wanted to pick up the phone and call him, to scream at him, to demand the answers I still needed. But another part of me, the part that had spent so long carrying this anger, realized that I wasn't angry anymore, not like I used to be. I had built a life that was mine. I had learned how to stand on my own, to trust myself. And for the first time, I felt like I was free from the chains of my past. But that didn't mean I was ready to let them back in. Not yet. Maybe not ever. The next weekend, Grandpa invited me to dinner at his house. The usual routine: steak, wine, quiet conversation. But this time, as we sat in the warmth of his study, he asked me a question I wasn't expecting. "Emily, have you heard from your parents recently?" I nodded, taking a deep breath. "Yeah, my dad reached out. He said they're still working on things, that they're trying to change." Grandpa studied me for a moment, his eyes sharp as ever. "What do you think about that?" I looked down at my hands, fidgeting with the glass of water in front of me. I don't know. Part of me feels like they've already shown me who they are, but another part of me wonders if maybe, just maybe, they're trying to be better. You can't change the past, Emily, Grandpa said softly, but you can control how you move forward. You can decide what kind of relationship you want with them. And more importantly, you can decide whether or not they deserve a place in your life. The weight of his words sank in. I had spent so much time focused on what my parents had taken from me, on the betrayal they'd caused. I had never really stopped to consider whether or not I was willing to let them back in, if there was a way for us to build something new, even if it was never going to be the same as before. The truth was, I wasn't ready to forgive them. Not yet. I didn't know if I ever would be. But I also knew that the anger I had been holding on to wasn't helping me anymore. It wasn't helping them either. And it was starting to feel like a weight I was carrying for no reason at all. That night, as I left Grandpa's house, I found myself thinking about my parents more than I had in a long time. They were still my parents, for better or worse. And while I wasn't sure I could ever trust them the way I used to, I couldn't completely close the door on them either. The next day, I picked up the phone and dialed my father's number. The phone rang twice before he picked up. "Emily?" he said, his voice cautious. "Yeah, it's me." There was a long pause before he spoke again. "I wasn't expecting you to call." "I've been thinking," I said slowly, the words coming out more easily than I thought they would. "About what you said, about trying to be better." "We are trying," he said, his voice full of quiet hope. "It's hard, but we're working at it. We don't want to lose you, Emily." "I know," I said, the words feeling like they had been stuck in my throat for months. "I don't know what the future holds. I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you completely. But maybe we can start over. Maybe we can build something new, something different." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then, finally, my father spoke. "We'll take whatever you're willing to give, Emily. No pressure, no expectations, just time." I took a deep breath, feeling a weight I didn't even realize I'd been carrying begin to lift. "Let's take it one step at a time." "Thank you," my father said, his voice thick with emotion. "We'll be here, whenever you're ready." As I hung up the phone, I felt something shift inside me. The anger that had consumed me for so long was still there, but it wasn't the driving force in my life anymore. It wasn't the thing that defined me. I was starting to realize that I didn't need to hold on to it. I didn't need to keep punishing myself by carrying it around. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I was ready to take the next step, whatever that might look like. The weeks after my conversation with my father were quiet, and the shift in my heart was slow. There was no sudden resolution, no dramatic moment where everything fell into place. It wasn't about finding closure, because I had already realized that closure wasn't something I could achieve overnight. It was about understanding that I could move forward without carrying the weight of anger, regret, or resentment. I still didn't know where my relationship with my parents would go, or if it would ever be what it once was. But I wasn't trying to force it anymore. I was learning to give myself the grace to take it one day at a time, to focus on my own growth, my own life. Hayes Digital Solutions was flourishing. I had hired a small team of talented developers and designers, and we were starting to attract high-profile clients. The business had gone from a one-person operation to something that could stand on its own. But beyond the success, I found joy in the fact that I had built this from scratch, with my own two hands. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was living. Grandpa's foundation was officially launched, and we were already starting to see the impact we were having. Scholarships were being awarded, and mentorship programs were taking off. I was involved in every aspect, from vetting candidates to setting up partnerships with local businesses and tech startups. It was everything I had dreamed of, but more. I had become part of something that was bigger than myself, something that would outlast me. And then, one Saturday afternoon, I received an unexpected text. It was from Becca. "Got a minute? I have some big news. Call me." I felt a surge of curiosity as I dialed her number. She picked up on the first ring, her voice light and cheerful. "You're not going to believe this," Becca said, barely able to contain her excitement. "I'm engaged. Ryan proposed last night. I'm getting married." The joy in her voice was contagious. I felt my own heart swell with happiness for her. I had known that Ryan was the one for her. They had been inseparable ever since their first date, and now, here they were, planning a future together. "That's amazing, Becca," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I'm so happy for you. You deserve all the happiness in the world." "I can't wait to share this with you," she said, a smile in her voice. "You're my best friend, Em. I want you by my side, every step of the way." I knew what she meant. Becca had always been there for me, through every up and down. And now, I would be there for her. We had built a family out of our friendship, a bond that had carried us through some of the hardest moments of our lives. And now I would have the privilege of standing by her as she started this new chapter with Ryan. A week later, I sat with Grandpa at our usual Sunday dinner, the conversation flowing easily between us, as it always did. But tonight, there was something different in the air, a quiet peace that had settled in my chest. The tension that had once been there, the strain in our relationship from the past few years, had finally eased. "I'm proud of you, Emily," Grandpa said, his voice soft as he looked across the table at me. "You've done something many people only dream of. You've built a life on your own terms. You've done what most people would never have the courage to do." I met his gaze, a small smile tugging at my lips. "I had a lot of help along the way." "You did," Grandpa agreed, "but you've always had the strength in you. I see so much of myself in you, Emily, and I know that whatever you do, you'll keep building, keep growing." I felt a lump in my throat at his words. There was so much history between us, so many lessons, so many memories, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was truly stepping into the future he had always hoped I would. After dinner, I sat in the study, looking out over the quiet streets of Tarrytown. The sun had just begun to set, casting a warm golden glow across the city. I thought about everything that had led me here, the struggles, the heartache, the betrayal. But I also thought about everything I had built from those broken pieces, my business, my condo, the foundation, my friends. And even if it wasn't perfect, I had found a way to heal. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about acknowledging it and choosing to move forward. It was about understanding that I had the power to create the life I wanted without relying on anyone else's approval or expectations. And then the phone rang. I picked it up before I could second guess myself. It was my mother. "Emily," she said, her voice quiet, "I just wanted to say thank you for giving us a chance. We're still working on ourselves. We're still trying to be better, and we will always be here for you, no matter what. But I understand if you're not ready. I just wanted you to know that." I closed my eyes, the weight of her words sinking in. I wasn't ready for a full reconciliation. I wasn't ready to forget everything that had happened. But in that moment, I realized something I had been holding back for so long. "I'm not ready either," I said softly, my voice steady. "But I'm not angry anymore. I'm not holding on to all of that. I'm building my own life now, and I want you to know that I'm okay. I really am." My mother's voice broke a little. "I hope one day we can be a part of that life." "I don't know what the future holds," I said quietly, "but I'll take it one step at a time, and so will you." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "Thank you, Emily, for giving us hope." I hung up the phone and sat there for a moment, the silence in the room comforting. I had said what needed to be said, and that was enough. The door wasn't completely closed, but it wasn't wide open either. Maybe someday in the future we could rebuild something, or maybe we wouldn't. But for now, I was at peace with it. The next morning, I woke up early, the sunlight streaming through the windows of my condo. I had a busy day ahead, more meetings, more projects, but as I looked around, I realized something. I had built this. Every success, every setback, every moment had led me to this point, and I was proud of what I had created. Life wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was mine, all of it, and that was enough.